All right, so hi everyone, and welcome to the network's exclusive Sales Mastery event with Jay Maymi. I'm Cheryl Sanchez, and I will be your host. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the founder of the network's organization, and I'm the author of The Journey of Success, Even When Success is Just Getting Out of Bed. For those of you who are new to our events, the networks is a network of leaders, forward thinkers, and entrepreneurs who have joined together to realize success and to create and foster positive social impact. If you're interested in learning more about the networks or our members, you can visit our website at thenetworks.org or find us on social media. On tonight's exclusive webinar, walk away with not just one, but a number of sales techniques as well as mindset shifts that will make your time worth it. Our speaker tonight is Jay Maymi. There's an advantage to growing up in a humble setting with meager means. The reality of your circumstances can either pummel you into mediocrity or extract from you a burning desire to excel and rise above. Jay's story is one of the latter. For the last 3 decades, his hunger to rise above has yielded an impressive array of accomplishments, from multiple successful businesses to bodybuilding championships, radio, TV, stage, and print work, to authoring 5 books, from an entire sales and personal development series to speaking in front of many diverse audiences on different topics. All have uniquely qualified him to offer valuable knowledge, instruction, inspiration, and impact to those seeking to develop a higher and greater expression of themselves. Jay?
I'm watching something with Brittany's mom. They're doing
All right. So welcome everyone. Let me go ahead and get my screen together here so we could have a jolly old time, and I can see just about everyone's faces here. This is fantastic. I really appreciate you taking time out tonight to spend some time with me. And when I promoted this event, one of the things I said was that I was going to keep this high impact, brief. I know the value of your time, but I also know the value of something that can not only consume a lot of your time, but also certainly make you uncomfortable sitting in front of a screen. You know, I think a lot of us are zoomed out. We are just, burnt out with the whole virtual meeting setting, and there's nothing like doing something in person. But in lieu of that, having an opportunity to do a little bit of a training here virtually, we'll embrace it. We're open to it, but we're going to be respectful of time. And I know this just exhaustion of virtual meetings, right? But that being said, I want you to understand that note takers are money makers. And if you are interested in being a money maker, note takers are money makers, and money makers are impact makers. One of the things I was sharing with a group of over the weekend that I've done a number of talks these last 4 or 5 days, and I had one early this morning. And one of the things I talked about is that if you want to be an impact maker, then an impact maker takes 2 things. It takes knowledge, but it also takes money, right? There's just no way to get around it. Well, how do you gain the money and how do you gain the knowledge? You do that by being open to forums like this, but not just sitting and listening, but sitting and actively participating by writing down little bits of information, taking notes, anything that jumps out at you that you're thinking about as a great add-on to what you do, that's what you write down. Now, I want to let you know that this is a conversation and a training that it's ever evolving. What I've done tonight is I've done just enough to be able to sort of give you something that allows you to have an understanding of what it entails to get to the next level. And not just in the next level to get a little better, but to get a lot better to the point where you are a master of the craft. So that's what tonight's about. It's a snapshot. It's a trailer of some highlights that I think you can walk away with, actionable, implementable steps that will help you begin the journey of becoming a master. Most people that are in sales are novices. They never have an opportunity to get to that ninja level. Most people traffic in the mascot level of sales when they, I know they want to be a master. Most people are whiners when they want to be a winner in this field. And the only way you get there, guys, is by learning, developing, and implementing and being able to do it repetitiously. Tonight is the learning part, the implementation, the repetition, the continuing and seeking of knowledge and wisdom in this area. That's going to be all up to you. All I can do tonight is open your mind to understand a lot of things that you probably didn't know before, or certainly weren't aware of, that maybe has handicapped your success in the ability to do three things, which in the end is sell. Number one, be able to communicate your content with confidence and competence. So communicate content with confidence and competence. Now, if I were to do an assessment right now, and matter of fact, I am going to do an assessment because we're going to talk about that. But before we jump into it, if I were to ask you to be brutally honest with yourself, and it doesn't matter what product you're selling, it doesn't matter who you rep, it doesn't matter if you're a coach, consultant, selling a tangible product or an intangible product, which is even more difficult. It doesn't matter what you do. I want you to ask yourself, or rather rate yourself based on what I just said. How confident and competent do you feel in communicating your content? Because that is a telltale sign of how much more you need to improve or maybe sharpen up a little bit. And by the way, what's the telltale, the greatest indicator of how well you sell is how much money you make, right? Let's just get real. If the ultimate indicator of how well you perform in your ability to communicate a product, to communicate competently your content, the only indicator that determines how well you are at it is how much money you make. Would you agree to that? Because at the end of the day, one of the things you can always deceive yourself is to believe that you got it and you're good, but the cash flow doesn't indicate that. You don't get enough people complying with your request. And what's your request? To buy, to put their trust in you as a service provider of value. That's the only indicator you've got, money. Okay, so rate yourself. I want to take a 5-second break, and I want you to honestly rate yourself. 1 is, or rather 10 is you're a ninja, right? You are a guru, a 10. A 1, you're on life support. You're comatose. So rate yourself between 1 and 10, your ability to communicate your content with confidence and competence. Take 5 seconds for that. I'm going to go around the room. I'm going to ask you. Okay, I'm going to ask you, how did you rate yourself? Okay. Whoop. All right. So now, 1 is comatose. You're on life support. You're surviving. 10, you're thriving. Now, let me be honest with you. I don't consider myself a 10. That's why I'm constantly working on myself. But I'm a solid 9. Solid 9. This is years of practice and drilling and rehearsing and implementing day in and day out and thinking about and determined to be better, which is something we'll talk about in a few. Okay. So now, does anybody want to volunteer your score between 1 and 10?
I can volunteer.
Go for it.
I would say I rate myself a 5.
Okay. Who else? By the way, guys, this is what training is about. This is what it's about. We're all in the same boat. We're all in the same trenches. We're all trying to get better. No one is better than the other. This is about being humble enough to say, I need help. Okay, so go for it. Who else?
So I'd probably put myself at a 7.
Okay.
7.5.
7.5. Okay. Who else?
I would say I am a 6.
A 6. Okay. Very good. I appreciate everybody's contribution. Anybody else want to throw their number in?
I would. Go ahead.
Who's that?
Well, I don't know. This is Maria. I am afraid I'm like a 3.
Okay. Hey, there's nothing. That's it. I mean, it is what it is, right? It is what it is.
I'm still struggling.
Okay. Now, can I give you the national average this is a very popular style of survey. It's done in variations, but it's it really has the same underlying theme. The national average for people that are in the business, and here's what's interesting about this dynamic. If anyone who's in business or sales or entrepreneur, anything that's communicating your content with the public, that has been in the business between 0 months and 5 years are in the 3 to 4 range. Anybody who's been in business or doing what they're doing over 5 years, usually the average is about 6.5 or 7. So some of you who gave me a 6 or 7, you probably fall in that category, right, Susan? Sounds like you've been doing it for very few people are in the 8, 9s, and 10s, and those are usually the ones that are in sales for 20, 25 years. And the reason why they've lasted so long is because they've mastered that skill, or at least become very proficient in it. The reality, most people that get involved in any kind of sales career, whether it's a job-related sales, that's their job, they have to sell, or as an entrepreneur, the reality is most people figure out, or they talk themselves out of that profession or that skill set being something that they're able to do in the first 2 to 3 years, because they never learned the stuff we're going to talk about tonight. If they were to learn it, they would stick around a lot longer to see the fruits of their efforts really compound. Some of you, as I go through some of this tonight, again, this is a trailer version. Some of you, you're going to say, wow, I wish I knew that 10 years ago. Wow, I need to learn more about that. Because these are the things that it's rare to find anywhere. Okay. But that's what separates the novice from the ninja. Okay. Now I've been selling since I was 13 years old. So I know this experience inside and out. I started to become an entrepreneur really when I was 13. And I kept on developing that career. Now I was 15 years old. I was already doing taxes for people when I was 15. When I was 16, I was doing personal training. When I was 20 and 21, I was doing entertainment. I was selling my entertainment shows at clubs and bars and nightclubs. I did that, and then I got involved in real estate and financial services, then speaking, and then the arts. So I've always made I've always made my income by having another person comply with my request of my service. The only time I ever had a job where I actually had a paycheck was for about 6 months, and I got fired from there because I realized this ain't for me. And I went back to just pulling money out of thin air, which is what sales is. Except if you're very good at it, the money's abundantly available in thin air for you to pull out. So I know how this works because I lived my whole life on somebody else's yes. That's a tough one. Okay. But let's talk about 5 truths before we get into some really good mastery keys. You cannot run away from these 5 truths of sales success. You can try to circumvent, won't work. You got to go through them, and you got to acknowledge them, accept them, and deal with them. The first one is that your current sales skills, they've brought you as far as you are right now, for better or for worse. If you've been in something for 6, 7, 8 years, 10 years, 15, 2 or 3, whatever success you have has a lot to do with the skill sets that you've acquired up until now. Would you agree with that? That's basically it. If you were to look back upon your career and whatever sales career you've had, if you were to look back upon that, and if you had learned a few things along the way that would have ratcheted your sales skills, in other words, you would have just been better at the ability to communicate your content confidently and competently to another person, your level of success right now would be greater. You might be further along in your business, further along in your career, further along in more savings, further along in more income and cash flow. Your debt would have been reduced because the extra money that you would have earned by closing more sales would have allowed you to pay off more debt. Things would have been completely different. But where you are now is where your skill sets have brought you so far. Now, there's a lot to be said about determination, and I get all that, but here's what I know. If you're on this webinar, is because you at least have a measure of determination to get better, and you're in the business of sales to some extent for however long you've been in it. So you're determined. It's just that your skill sets have only brought you so far. So here's the key to this. Unless you increase, develop, and allow your sales skills to evolve, it's pretty predictable what the next 5 years is going to look like. the next 5 years are going to look like the last 5 years, a whole lot like the last 5 years. Why? Because your skill sets haven't changed. Does that make sense? Let's go with truth number 2. Everything starts with an honest assessment. Oftentimes when I speak in front of groups, I make a joke about entrepreneurs are the greatest sufferers of a disease that I call EDD. Now, I want some of you to get your mind out where it's not supposed to be. I'm not talking about that kind of EDD. I'm talking about EDD, the way that I describe it, the way that I call this disease, it's entrepreneurial delusion disorder. It seems like many entrepreneurs suffer from this delusion disorder. They actually think that they are doing better than they really are. I mean, I guess a lot of people struggle with that. It doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur. You have this disconnected grounding where you think that you are doing more than you could be, or than you are. You don't think there's any better you can do. You think you've arrived. That's delusional. So the way that you accept the truth is to have an honest assessment, which is why I had that exercise done earlier, so you could rate yourself on 1 to 10. That's a healthy exercise because it allows you to recognize the truth. I'm not where I want to be. And honestly, my self-assessment speaks of one thing: I need to get better. That's the truth. So let's talk about another truth. To be a sales master, a sales ninja, you have to be humble and you have to be hungry. Let me explain that to you. The person who realizes I need help. I thought that I would be able to get over this hurdle, but I'm struggling. I'm challenged. I need help. That's humble. That's a sign of humility. I was at a sporting event 2 weeks ago, and it was young kids, teenagers, preteens, and they were all doing a sporting event. And I noticed a couple of the teenagers had attitudes when the coaches were trying to give them constructive criticism so they can compete better. And I thought to myself, how insane. Here you have a student or a young athlete who's having wisdom poured into them by somebody who knows more, and yet this teenager was lacking the humility to recognize I could learn from this person. Let me lower my pride, recognize I don't know what I think I know, be humble enough to accept instruction. That's what I mean. You have to have the humility to accept when it's time to take on instruction from somebody else. And that means that your pride has to be set aside. Does that make sense? So you have to be humble. I need help. My sales sucks. I'm losing sales. I'm getting discouraged. I'm getting depressed. I'm about to quit. I don't want to quit. Where can I go get what's available for me to get help? Because if not, I'm going to die. That's humility. But then you have to be hungry. And what do I mean by that? It's one thing to be humble to get the information and the knowledge and the resources to help you get better, but then you've got to be hungry to implement it. You got to be hungry to put it to practice. You just can't take great content and do nothing with it, because the humility of learning that allows you to learn will fall short because you didn't implement it. You got to be hungry. So humble and hungry. One without the other won't work. You could be hungry but not be humble, and you're going to fail. You could be humble and not hungry, and you're going to fail. You need both to succeed. That's the truth. And here's the next truth. You have to be intentional, and then you have to be intense. You have to ratchet up the intensity. Let me give an example of what that means. You can get up in the morning and decide, I'm going to make some phone calls. I like what Jay's talking about. I need to go out there and I need to engage more people on social media. I need to make more phone calls. I need to contact more people. I need to really get out there and do more activity. And you get up in the morning, you set the time to do it, and you have a game plan to do it. You set your chart the course. You're intentional. You don't wing it, because winging is not a strategy and you are intentional. But here's what you forget to do. You forget to add intensity to it. In other words, you get up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, but you don't get to making those phone calls till like 2 hours later. And when you do, you make 2 or 3 and you're done. You have to be intense. What's the true definition of intensity? Here's the definition of intensity. Massive amount of effort in a short amount of time. That's intensity. It's a massive amount of effort, not for a long period of time, but for a short period of time. When I used to be a personal trainer, one of my businesses was a personal trainer. Again, that's one of the things I did from 19 to 22 years old. I have my own personal training business. And I used to sell my training packages to people. And the very first question I would ask somebody in doing the initial assessment, I would ask them how much weight you want to lose. And here's the key question, by when? And when they would tell me I want to lose 30 pounds by the summer, and it was always by the summer, I would tell them, wonderful. Here's what that's going to require of you in terms of intensity. And I would give them the physiological mathematical formula, because there is one, that calculates how much calories you got to burn to lose weight, lose the amount of weight you want. So the way it works is if you have low intensity, you only have to burn, it's only a certain amount of activity to burn a certain amount of calories in 1 minute. If you want to burn more calories per minute, you have to increase the level of activity, the level of intensity. That's what you hear at the gyms, high intensity. What does that mean? That means in that 10-minute worth of time or that 15, 20-minute worth of exercise session, you're all in. It's high power, maximum effort. That's high intensity. Why? Because you burn more calories. It gets things moving. Well, same thing. You can be intentional, but have no intensity, and you're going to fail. You're never going to hit the high mark as a sales master. Be intentional about learning, and then be intense about the application of it immediately. I see too many people, I hear too many people, I watch too many people. They get all this knowledge and information. 2 weeks later, they've done nothing with it. There's no intensity. How you expect to be a success if you don't apply what you've intended to learn? It doesn't work. Let me give you the last one. Sales mastery requires you to operate on multiple levels. One of the things we're going to talk about next is what are those different levels? Meaning, if you're going to operate to become a sales master, it's not just about intensity. It's not just about the mindset behind it. It's about the actual holistic approach towards selling, which involves body language. It involves body language, verbal imagery, psychology. Everything we're going to talk about now, it involves all those things working synergistically to deliver the best version of you, the best sales presentation, the best sales conversation that you can to another person, so that they can give you the ultimate answer you want to hear, which is a yes. I see too many training programs that focus on the words. That's okay. I see a lot of training programs that focus on closing. That's okay. I see some training programs that focus on body language. That's okay. But in and of it themselves, it won't work. They've got to be worked together, operating in one synergistic format, so that way you can maximize the probability of getting a yes from someone because you're operating on all levels. That's a master. Okay. So far, so good, guys. All right. So let's talk about some of the keys then that are important. Five keys to mastery. Now, one of the things I'll share with you, each of these keys is easily an hour to 2 hours of training, easily. So I say that because I don't want you to feel like, oh man, that was good. Why did you cut it so short? Because there's only so much time to get into this. But the truth is, there's only so much compartmentalizing that you can do over the period of 15, 20 minutes. And more than your brain or your mind can take in at any moment in time, it actually works in reverse. You won't remember it, and it'll all be on one big jargled mess. We don't want that. So I'm going to give you one from each of these keys that you can use right away. Okay. By the way, all of these are expounded on my sales course, but I'll talk a little bit more about towards the end here. I dedicate complete modules to each of these. But here's the first key to mastery. You have to understand psychology. Let me give this, let me highlight the importance of this in a different analogy. Let's say that you and I were going to go to war. We were going to go to battle. We're going to go to war. And all of a sudden I said to you, hey, before you get in there and start that battle, come here for a second. And I took one arm and I tied it behind your back. So now you're going to war with one arm tied behind your back. You got one left. And I said, no, come here for a second. You're not ready to go over there yet. And I took a what do you call it, eye patch, and I put an eye patch over the other eye. So now you got one less arm and you got an eye patch. And then as you're heading out the door, I said, wait a minute, let me have that gun. Let me have that big sword. Let me have all your weapons here. And I give you a plastic fork. So you got a plastic fork, one arm tied behind your back, and your other eye is covered. And the enemy is fully loaded, both arms, both legs, great vision, high-tech weaponry. What chance would you have of winning? Zippo. You might get a lucky shot in with your fork. You might poke him a little bit. But what would be the real chance that you would have to succeed? Zero. That's how most salespeople, business people, entrepreneurs, communicators attempt to sell or to communicate their content with a prospect because they don't understand psychology. You would make your life so much easier, guys, if you just understood how the brain operates, how it works. What are the triggers that people go through in order to say yes? If you understood the wiring that we all have, by the way, we all have the same wiring. The programming is different, but the wiring is the same. And if you understood that, you could leverage it very cleverly, very subtly, very subliminally, very persuasively to get more yeses. Now, I'm going to hit the pause button. When I say yes, here's what I don't mean yes to. Initially, the end result is yes to purchasing the product, joining your business, whatever that ultimately yes looks like for you in terms of an action taken, an application taken, whatever. I'm talking about the initial yes that you have to first get, and that's for somebody to say yes to giving you their time. This is the biggest mistake that novices make, that they're pursuing to get a yes for somebody to buy or join or do whatever. No, those are the actions that will come after somebody sees the value of your proposition, but they first have to say yes to giving you their time. The two most precious things that you and I have that we find difficulty parting ways with is our time and our money. Isn't that true? So why is it any different for somebody else? The two most difficult things a person has that they will filter you is when it comes saying yes to something that can consume their time, because we don't want to waste our time. And number two, giving away our money. But they can't give away the money until they first say yes to giving you time. So focus your approach on somebody saying yes to giving you time, because then depending how strong your presentation is and everything else that we're going to talk about, depending how strong that is, and if there's a real genuine interest in your product or service, you'll get the yes that is the actionable yes that will put money in your pocket or grow your business. But you first have to get that yes to time. So how do you do that? Psychology. Let me give you the number one way you can get somebody to do anything. In terms of time, there's 5 triggers we all go through, whether we're living in Houston, whether you're in New York, whether you're in the jungles somewhere in Africa, or you're in China, it doesn't matter. We're all wired the same way. Number 1, 5 triggers, but I'll give you the main one after I give you the 5. Number 1, safety. What triggers our decisions is when we are pursuing a degree of safety. We want to feel safe. I'm going to spend more time on that in a minute. Number two, when there is a sense of certainty. We are certain-based creatures. Number three, community. We crave community. We are tribal-minded. That's why if you were to go to meetup.com and just put on there, come up with the craziest name for a meetup. Meetup.com, if you don't know what it is, it's a social site. You can just create a group. You can create any group. So if you went on there and created the most craziest of group that you think there's nobody on, there's no one is going to join this, you'd be surprised within 24 hours, somebody's going to join your group. You could call it Rock Eaters of Dallas, Texas. And somebody's, what? We're tribal. We have to have community. And the fourth trigger is validation. Validation. We want to feel that we're important. We want to feel validated. We want people to know that we exist, that we matter, that I'm here for a reason, and that I'm impacting you, and you find value in me as a person. Validation. What I say and what I do in my life matters. And when somebody can validate that, hitting that trigger. And the last one is family. Love was the last trigger. Okay. But the most important trigger. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to share. I'll ask you, what do you think the most important trigger is in somebody saying yes to your proposal, your offer? What do you think the most important trigger is? Anybody can answer, or at least go for it.
I think tribal community. When you see that other together and succeeding, you want to be a part of that too.
That's a very good answer, but it's not.
Safety?
Yeah, it's safety. It's the feeling of being safe. If you want someone to align themselves with you, you have to watch the words so that they don't instill fear, lack of transparency, muddling of information, because all of that doesn't instill safety. It instills the opposite. And people that are fearful do not make decisions. People who feel safe will always gravitate to that place. Let me give an example of that. If you're a realtor and you show a buyer a gorgeous home, I mean, it's got state-of-the-art, gorgeous, and it's affordable. And you take them into that house and it has everything they wanted in that house. They go to the second floor and they happen to look out the window because higher up, they can see more of the neighborhood. And they see that above the tree line, not too far from the house, is a questionable street with some questionable people hanging out in front of the bodega, grocery store. Do you think that buyer is going to buy that house, make an offer on that house? Why? It's not because of the house. It's not because of the affordability. They could have everything they wanted, but they look out the window and they don't feel safe. They're not buying that house. You can have a car. This is studies have proven this. Cars with all of the wonderful, beautiful features looks lovely. But why don't they sell as much as the cars who have less features, but are considered more safe? For the very same reason. People will gravitate to what they feel will keep them, their loved ones, their body, their mind, their emotions, their well-being in a good place. Threaten that with your words, threaten it with your presentation, and you could kiss that opportunity goodbye. Very important. You have to understand that. Here's another key to mastery. Asking effective questionings. Effective questioning is what allows you to write this word down. It gives you intel. Now, one of my biggest pet peeves, and I see so many professionals, they shoot themselves in the foot because they ask all of the either irrelevant questions, or they ask terrible questions, or they don't ask any questions. They go right for the jugular. All of you are familiar with the example I'm going to give you. You accept somebody's request on LinkedIn, somebody who says, hey, connect with me. I saw your profile, looks pretty cool. Hey, so-and-so, we have a mutual connection, connect with me. And you smell the profile, you smell the invitation to connect is completely disingenuous, right? But you connect anyway. And what happens immediately once you hit connection, once you hit make a connection request on LinkedIn, what does that person immediately begin to do? Solicit. Ever have that experience? Right? And doesn't that piss you off? It's like, what the hell? These people, all of a sudden, they didn't even bother asking any questions. They didn't bother asking. They're just immediately going for the jugular without even really knowing who I am or what's important to me. Well, as bad as that sounds, the majority of professionals, salespeople, they sort of are very close to doing and do the same thing. Let me ask you to consider what an effective question is, and I want you to write this down. An effective question is what allows you to glean what that person, what's that person's safety zone? What's their safety zone? That's an effective question. That gives you intel. What disturbs them the most? What are they running away from? What are they running away from, and what are they running towards? Effective questions. By the way, effective questioning also allows you to prepare ahead of time for the overcoming of an objection, because you can identify early on by the questions that you ask, even before you get to a presentation. Those are called pre-paving questions. When I was a single guy, I understood the power of effective questioning. And I used it often. And it gave me enough intel to know what's going on in the mind of that person that I may or may not ask out or date. I want to know. Effective questionings, pre-paving questionings allow you to get the intel that you need in order to proceed in the way that will serve them best and serve you best. And it has nothing to do with, do you like this product, or how much money? It has nothing to do with any of that. Let me give you the next key. By the way, in my sales course, I really dive into effective questioning, and I give sample after sample after sample after sample after sample on how to use words in such an effective way that it pierces through the conscious mind down to the subconscious mind, so that way you know where that person lives. That's powerful. The power of feline. You want to be a master? You want to go from novice to ninja, from mascot to master, from whiner to winner? Have more sales, more success, make more money? Learn the power of feline. This is something that I came up with about 20 years ago in doing sales training for my guys. And feline is an acronym that stands for fascinate, intrigue, and lead to action. Fascinate, intrigue, and lead to action. And that process there is the way our brain works. When we arrive at a decision, all of us. Now, I'm speaking about a major decision. I don't mean like, what am I going to have for dinner? I'm talking about a major decision, whether it's to invest, whether it's to buy a home, buy a product, get in a relationship, buy a car. Anything major requires the brain to go through a process called feline. Fascinate, intrigue, and lead to action. And guess who is the master puppeteer in the process? You. Because you ahead of time understand that that person's mind, it has to go through that process to arrive at taking action. It has to go through a process of being fascinated, being intrigued, and then they're going to take action based on how you lead them. So it really gives you an opportunity to be strategic with the words that you use and your game plan. Let me give an example. All of us have been through this process I'm going to share. If you've ever bought a car, a brand new car, or even a home, or maybe an outfit or something, if you got into the retail stores, here's what happens. And I'll just use cars because cars is a very simple experience. So, you know, when you go to the dealership, if it's a good dealership and if the people are trained well, when you walk into a dealership and you walk and you get into the showroom floor, what do you begin to see immediately? What do you see immediately? Brand new cars, shiny, brand new cars. Immediately, what starts to happen the minute you walk into the showroom, fascination starts to take a toll. You're fascinated. By the way, we become fascinated with what we see and then what we hear. We become fascinated with what we see and then what we hear and then what we imagine. I can give you thousands of examples on that, guys. Here's another one. If you're married or single, it doesn't matter. Remember back when you were single or if you were dating someone, what's the first thing that caught your attention when you maybe saw them at a meeting, at a restaurant, that person that you saw, or maybe online dating? What's the first thing that caught your attention? It wasn't what they said, it was how they looked. That visual was fascinating. Maybe there was a beautiful woman, maybe it was a beautiful guy, maybe it was a beautiful car. There was something that caught your imagination. You got fascinated by it. Well, when you walk into the dealership, the brand new cars fascinate you. You get inside the car, the smell of the leather, more fascination. You go into a brand new home that you're looking to buy, you look around, it looks nice. That's why a good realtor will always doll up the house. Ooh, beautiful house, fascination. Maybe you go up to the person that you found to be attractive, and the minute you start to talk, they smell nice, they sound, fascination. That process is happening whether or not you want it to happen. It's just the way it works. Then comes intrigue. See, fascination grabs your attention. Intrigue, listen to me, intrigue says, what if? What if I lived in this home? What if that was my home office? What if that was my bedroom? What if my kids played in the backyard? That'd be cool. Or what if my kids jumped into that pool? What if this car, I pulled it up to my driveway, and what if my neighbors saw me driving this car? Oh yeah. Oh, what if my cousin, who thinks he's all that, he sees me driving this? What if he sees, what if I go to dinner with her? What if we start to date? See how that works? Fascination leads to intrigue. Intrigue starts to place you in the position of having ownership. It allows you to start to think, what if? When the guy who is the sales guy and he finally sees the car sales guy and he's walking around and he finally sees that you're intrigued because you sat in the car, which is a trigger for them. And that's true, by the way. The minute you sit in the car and you spend more than 10, 20, 30 seconds in that car, that's when they go into action because they understand intrigue is already taken a hold of you. And what do they do when they come over to you? They don't ask you, what's your payment? What's your financing? Or they don't ask you any of that, do they? What do they ask you? Want to take it for a ride? Isn't that true? Want to take it for a ride? They know the minute they get you in the car and you take that car for a spin, whether that one or another one, you're done. As long as the financing makes sense, you're done. Because fascination, intrigue is already selling the car. The leading to action is when he says, let's go see what those payments would look like so you can take this car home. And the minute you say, okay, let's go take a look at those payments, you're cooked. You're cooked. He led you to action. That's the process of a sales master. Now, that takes practice. It takes rehearsal. It takes a lot of ongoing duplication, repetition. But if you could become a master of the process of FILA, You can sell whatever you want to whoever, as long as that person is genuinely looking for your particular service or your product. The power of feel is powerful. I spent a lot of time in my sales course with that. The use of verbal imagery. Here's one we're going to have some fun with. And this is one, guys, that I specifically give words after words, 35 different words to elicit verbal imagery in my course. But let me explain to you why this is important. There's something to be said about visual imagery, presentation. You have to have presentation. All that's true. But what if you don't have anything to present? What if your laptop breaks down? Or what if you're on the phone with somebody? They don't have anything to see. Here's what you better have. You better have a grasp on how to use words to create imagery. Because imagery, listen to me, imagery creates the emotions that lead people down a path of decision making. If you have nothing visual to show, then a master will know how to use the words to trigger those images in the person's mind in order for them to say yes. Let me give you a technique. The most powerful word you can use, this is good, guys. The most powerful word you can use that gives you what I call Jedi Master powers. A Jedi Master. You become a Jedi Master with what I'm going to show you. One word. And I'm not going to give it to you. I'm going to exercise it with you. So pay attention to me right now. Forget about everything else you do. Watch me. Okay? Watch me. For the next couple of minutes, I want you to imagine that the door in your room right now opens up and someone who you haven't seen in a long time walks through that door. I want you to imagine that. Someone who you haven't seen has just walked in the door. Naked. Butt naked. For better or for worse, butt naked. Now, by show of hands, how many of you thought of somebody? Right? I'm going to hit the pause button right there. I gave your subconscious mind an instruction, and I said, I want you to imagine. The minute I said that, your brain became like a puppy. Give me what I have to think about. That's the way it works. You ever see a puppy or a dog that's waiting for, the master to say something? Like my little guy running around here. That's how the brain works. The minute that you tell somebody, I want you to imagine, you've pierced the conscious mind. Now you're in control of the subconscious mind. And here's why I know it's true. And here's why you'll know it's true. How many of you, once I gave that instruction, could not think about what I asked you to think about? You could not see that person in the door. You could not see the door open and whoever showed up there. You could not see that person naked. It was beyond your conscious control. Because I said to your subconscious mind, I want you to imagine. And then I hit the pause button so that your subconscious mind could say, I'm ready. I'm ready. I could have said anything. I want you to imagine a big fat elephant. I want you to imagine a shiny new car. I want you to imagine getting bad news from someone passed away. Whatever I would have given as the instruction, it would have popped up in your mind. And I would have just kept on going with verbal imagery, because I use one word, imagine. How powerful could you become in expressing your content, in sharing your presentation material, and becoming more confident and competent, and your ability to communicate your content, knowing that with one word, one phrase, you got them. And then learning how to evolve and develop the wording around that phrase, so you create the proper emotions, you resuscitate those emotions that leads them to the place that you want them to go, so they can say yes. Powerful stuff. Powerful stuff. I'll give you a technique that I used to use when I was doing life insurance sales, my career has always been in financial services. I know some of you may be in financial services. Let me give you one that was very sobering. And if you are someone that's here and you're married, you're going to relate to this. Pretend like you and I didn't know we weren't on this right here. And I spend a lot of time on this technique in the modules on my course. So I'm giving you a snippet, but I think you'll get the picture. So let's pretend that I'm sitting with you, you're married, and you have kids. Let's just pretend, even if you're not, just pretend. And I'm having a conversation with you about, just keep it simple, life insurance. And I said to you, John, brother Mary, I want you to imagine that it's 5:30, 6 o'clock. John's usually home by now. I want you to imagine right around that time, you get a knock on the door, you go to open the door, and there's 2 police officers. And by the look of their faces, you know the news you're about to receive is not good. I want you to imagine their faces. I want you to imagine how your heart's going to beat if you receive the news that you are anticipating because John's not home and you got 2 cops in the front of your house. How difficult will things be thereafter? If what they say to you is what you were imagining they would, and it's your worst nightmare. You can imagine that. Could that happen? See that? Can you see why I sold a lot of life insurance? Can you see why I sold a lot of life insurance? How could Mary at that point not imagine those images? Why? Because they do happen. How could Mary not feel the feelings that any mom, any wife raising kids would feel, the fear of that actual thing happening, because it does happen. And now they got to raise those kids and pay the mortgage, do whatever they got to do on their own. And how do you think John sitting there is going to feel when he tries to tell me, I don't want any life insurance? He's not going to say no. Because Mary is going to tell him, yes, you are going to do this. And what did I do? I didn't say nothing. I said, Mary, I want you to imagine. Now, Susan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so that's using fear as what your picture is all about. Is fear the best one to be going after because of the whole safety thing, or is desire as effective?
You can use imagine in whatever way. That little example there was using not so much fear, but the reality of what can happen, because it does happen on a daily basis, right? Fear would be something that rarely happens and that I'm trying to convince them that it does. Then you could say, yeah, that's using fear. But sometimes, and here's the reality of this, sometimes, depending on the situation, depending on the person, sometimes a very hard approach that is based on the realities of life, where you have to really bring it to them that this could happen, because it happens often. It's just a shot of reality in a way that allows them to feel the emotions of, hey, this could happen to me and I don't want it to happen to me. What do I need to do? By the way, the same thing could be done about saving for retirement. There's many times I sat down with somebody and I said to them, imagine you're 65 and 70 years old and you still have to get up in the morning to work because you didn't save enough. Imagine you're 75 years old and you're trying to figure out, how am I going to pay for these prescriptions because I didn't save enough? I want you to imagine how that's going to feel.
Or the story I use, which is a real one, is that you're to that point and you want to quit, you can't, but now you have to because you just lost your job, and or your business went under or something's happened and it's not an option. This wasn't a
Right.
choice anymore. You're
Right.
now that old and it's not a choice to work anymore because
Right.
you're sick or something's happened.
Right, exactly. And that could be a way to talk to them about long-term care or health
Right.
insurance and things like that, right?
Right,
But let's
exactly.
flip this around. Let's flip this around because you can use imagery in a positive way. So let me give you an example about that. Let's say we're back to talking to Cheryl. I say, Cheryl, I want you to imagine how awesome it's going to feel that when you arrive at the age of 62 or 63, that you're going to be able to fire your boss, stop working, live the rest of your life doing whatever the hell you want because you have enough money saved. Because along the way, you started to apply discipline to savings, and all those years now compounded. Imagine how great it's going to feel to know you've got all the money you need for whatever expenses you have for as long as you live. How great is that going to feel? Can you imagine how awesome that's going to be? That's why we need to start saving some money today, because that day will arrive and you're going to feel great when it does. Imagine that. Isn't that nice? That's the reverse. The point is verbal imagery. There's a lot of techniques to it. Imagine is one of the top. So let's get to the last one so we can wrap up here. I spend a lot of time in my course talking about body language. I talk about FBI techniques. I bring in other people to discuss body language. But the most important part about body language has a lot to do with congruency. And I'll spend a minute on that. It's very difficult to use words that are intent to create a certain image or a certain feeling or a certain emotion, but your body language is saying something completely different. And hear me on this. We communicate more non-verbally than we do verbally. Long before there was the creation of words, we communicated physically, our gestures, our eyes, our movements. Non-verbal communication is just as powerful as verbal communication, but they have to be congruent. You can't project an image of confidence, shoulders back, head up, pointing finger of power, control, and influence, and use words like, man, I suck. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm terrible. Boy, I feel like crap today. You can't do that. And vice versa. You can't head down, shoulders shrugged, lethargic looking, and talk about how great your company is or how wonderful you're serving. It just can't work. There has to be congruency with the words you use and the body image you project, because both of them together is the absolute 1-2 punch in becoming a sales master. And in my in that particular module, I talk about 6 critical body postures and the way that you can use body language in order to project power, confidence, certainty. Remember I said certainty? Power, confidence, and certainty immediately. And then how do you get people to follow you around on every word? How do you project to be the subject matter expert or the authority? The authority part, when I get into that module, has a lot to do when we were all kids. You can leverage that with body language in a good way. Listen, anything that you can ever learn could always be used in a bad way, right? You could always learn anything. You can learn banking and use it in a bad way. What I'm talking about is learning these things that when used properly in a good, healthy, wholesome, effective way for the betterment of someone else's experience, you'll always win. You'll always win. And that's what ninjas do. That's what masters do. Everything combined so that someone else benefits from the experience. Someone else's best interest is always first. That's one of the mindsets of a ninja. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to open up just for a minute or two here. Any questions that you might have, any comments or questions? Cheryl, what time is it, by the way? How long have we gone?
A couple minutes past 8.
All right, it's about an hour. We've been 45 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So let's open up for Q&A. If anyone has any, go go for it. And then if not, I'm going to share with you what I think would be the next step that I would encourage everyone to explore. Susan, are you saying something? Because you're muted. Oh, okay.
Now I'm telling myself my notes to get the whole idea down.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. So any questions or comments, questions or comments from anyone so far? What did you find that was the most noteworthy that you, of noteworthiness that you took, or something that you feel, hey, I didn't know about that. I want to learn more about that, of what we spoke about so far?
Oh, I do have a question. So what do you do when like a lot of your sales or a lot of your like networking is being done not in person, so like online and stuff like that? How can you like, you know, make use effectively of, like, you usually sometimes only get like one shot at something when it's just like online, and you know there's no body language and stuff like that.
Give me a second, I'll tell you right now. All right, so everyone can see my screen again, right?
Yep.
So there's a disadvantage when you are trying to establish rapport, subject matter expertise online, especially if you're missing the visual component of it. So if that's what you're referring to, that's always going to be a challenge, okay? And if you're also referring to back and forth emailing, now there's some things you can do on back and forth emailing because you still have verbal imagery, you still have the ability to fascinate leads, you still have all that. So you're not really that handicapped, but to an extent you are going to be a little bit handicapped because the physicality of your body movements, your face, it's a major component. Number one, for someone to like you, and number two, for someone to really see that there's congruency in what you're saying and what you're projecting. But it's not so detrimental that you still can improve your ability to close more, because there's many other components that are going to be helpful if you learn them. Okay. What sort of work do you do, Brittany?
My friend and I have a jewelry business. So it's mostly a lot of like on Etsy and things, and we're trying to use social media.
Okay. Yeah, so your business is a little bit different, it's more tangible. It's kind of like you see it, but there really isn't a whole lot of selling involved, because if they land on the site and they like the jewelry, they're going to buy it, right? It pretty much sells itself. They like it, they buy it. If they don't like it, they're not going to buy it no matter what you say. Okay. So, but there are always some things you can do to get people to go to the site.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I want to like work on, is like, you know, expanding our reach and getting people more interested to actually get there.
Oh, exactly. So this kind of goes back to what I said. Your yes would be someone's investment of time to go to the site, right? So how do I get people to go to, how do I say the right words? How do I create the right feeler for someone to say, oh, snap, let me go check out that site. Once they get there, if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. You can't control that. But getting to the site is where you want to become even more effective. And there's some ways to do that. But that's going to be fascination and intriguing somebody. And using verbal imagery. And by the way, one of the things that jewelry, the reason why people buy jewelry is because there's a sense of looking good, if you look good, you feel good. There's a sense of empowerment, a sense of confidence. Those are the words I would use to drive people to the site, because ultimately that's what the jewelry is going to represent. A sense of looking good, feeling good, and I'm empowered. I feel more confidence. Okay. So, and we could, that's a great, I can help you with some things with that. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. So guys, let me encourage you to do the following. I created this course here because I was fed up with a lack of solid content that was out there. Keep in mind, I also have organizations. I have sales organizations. I have businesses that I want those that I am that are part of my organizations to thrive, because their success for me is important, not for any financial reason, but for their own well-being. So after researching and searching and looking at what's out there, I didn't find anything that I felt was all incumbent. I felt lots of courses and books and videos that was in one particular area, but a lot of them didn't even address the stuff that I just addressed in the last half hour. So I decided to put this course together called the Thrive Sales Mastery course, where somebody who is just walking in a door, brand new individual in sales, or somebody who is mid-level or even looking to fine-tune their sales skills, can hop on this course and not only have a masterclass experience, but be able to go at your own pace, learn on your own, time, but be able to have a diversified appeal to learning in a modular-based course. So, and by the way, I'm always adding on new content. There's over 32 modules, hours of content on here. And if you notice, you can go to the site. I'll leave you with the site. But these are all the different modules that I create. Some modules are 45 minutes, some are 30, some are 18. It all depends. So you can go learn at your own pace and pick the module that you want to see for that particular time. Tons of overcoming objections. There's the asking effective questions. I get into that. And a bunch of FELA method. I spend a lot of the science of yes is very powerful. The use of imagery, words matter. I talked about verbal. You have to, there's so many words you have to know how to use to trigger those emotions. Body language. But then I brought on some absolute masters of their craft. I didn't want to create a course that was based on my experiences and my knowledge. And I wanted to bring other voices into this because some very good people out there have some very good insight on sales training and they're masters and gurus themselves. Jack Singer is renowned. Zandra Evans, Brian Flanagan was Zig Ziglar's top guy for a very long time. All of these people have their own gifts and talents, and they all teach. This guy, Jason Forrest, is ridiculous. Ridiculous. And we're constantly adding on more and more. So go to the site, have a look at the reviews. You can look at what people have already said about the site, people that already started to take the course, people who know my courses. It's very reasonably priced, guys. I didn't want to do it and price it in a way that the average person couldn't afford. This is not for any anyone who is all right. It's for anyone who's a beginner and their budget is tight, but they still want to learn. It accommodates them. Okay, and it's.
Hey, is that last slide the one that has the link on it?
To join?
The information on the site so they could
Right, thrivesalesmastery.com.
Okay.
thrivesalesmastery.com. There's tons of ways that to take the course. You can buy the whole course and have access to all 32 modules, or you can have a couple of modules dropped every month, so that you could sort of learn and implement as opposed to being overwhelmed with all of these modules. I think sometimes that's counterproductive. Okay, but I encourage you to go to the site. It's a wonderful site, tons of information on there, and at any time you can stop. It's no commitment. Go for 4 or 5 months, or continue going. Every month, every year I'm dropping in new content. I'm in the middle of recording this year's content already. Okay, so that's thrivesalesmastery.com. I encourage you guys to give it a shot. Okay.
And Jay, you also have your radio show?
Yes, so the radio show, in fact, let me go back to the last slide here. These are my handles, guys. Track me down and connect with me on Instagram and Twitter. There's my LinkedIn page, my Facebook page. Take a picture of that if you'd like so you can connect with me. My radio show site, the JayMaymiTalkShow.com. It's a nationally syndicated show. It's rocking. It's on 8 of the top 10 markets in the country. And last I heard, at least in the Dallas station, I've been nominated for one of their new show, for an award of the best new show That's for the radio station. Now there's some tough competition. There's some tough competition, but we'll see. Just having a nomination is fantastic. So we'll see what happens. But it's a really good show. Some really good people, great knowledge and wisdom on there from tons of guests that have been on the show, which Cheryl actually came on the show one time to speak about her book. All right, guys, if there's nothing else, Cheryl, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Jay. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. For those of you who are not yet a part of the networks, we would love for you to join us on the journey of success. It's only $5 a month, less than a cup of fancy coffee and less than a cost of the Nettini, which is our signature drink. Imagine yourself as a part of this community.
Love it.
We look forward to connecting with you again in the future. Stay safe and enjoy the journey, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.